Okay. Would you look at that? Music's coming through. My voice is coming through. Camera looks fine. Ha! It works! Of course, I'm looking over to my right because the stream OBS is on my right-hand monitor, but y'all will forgive me. Let me readjust myself. Well, welcome, everyone, back to the Pathfinders podcast. I haven't done an episode since shortly after CitizenCon, so yeah, oof. But you know what? The holidays are hard for a space dad. Yeah, it's just been absolute chaos. November was particularly rough just because my wife was out of town for a week of it. Our au pair, our in-home nanny, was on vacation for a week. Hey, The Drift, good to see you. Happy New Year. Yeah, thanks for coming and hanging out. Happy New Year. Yeah, and I talked about it last stream, but where I work, we opened up a new base, and so we hired a bunch of new people. There's a bunch of internal movement, so we've been training new people. There's been a bunch of holes in the schedule, so I picked up overtime on incentive, which is double time, plus the field training officer incentive. So I couldn't turn down the money, and it's just been one thing after another. And then, of course, all the putting decorations up, taking decorations down. My son's birthday at the beginning of beginning of December. It's been a busy last 2 months. And I've actually been playing a decent amount of Star Citizen. I just haven't had the energy to stream hardly at all. I definitely haven't had the energy to do a podcast because, as much as I enjoyed doing it, it is work. It requires cognitive bandwidth that a lot of times, I just don't have because, being a stay-at-home, a stay-at-home dad with 2 part-time jobs and everything else is a lot of work. But hey, I'm back. I'm here. And this is the first episode of the Pathfinders podcast in the year of 2026. And I've been meaning to cover the letter from the chairman. And we're only going to cover the letter there from the chairman this evening. So we'll see how long that takes. It's got some good information, can sort of confirms a few things that many of us, myself included, have been suspecting. It leaves out some hard dates, but it's CR going on the record and committing CIG to stuff. But at the same time, he did that last year, and while your mileage may vary, they've done a pretty good job of hitting the mark with a lot of things in terms of stability, and people may have different definitions of what playability is, but by CIG's definition, the game is more playable. People thought that they were going to make the game playable, more playable, increase playability. Now everybody has lots of differing opinions about the quality of the content, and I will absolutely give you that, because there's some content that has absolutely fallen really flat. Other things have been a lot better. Like I've really enjoyed all the Onyx stuff. If the resource drive had worked as intended, it would have been a lot better, but I still enjoyed myself. Even with doing workarounds, I had fun with people. What came in 4.4 with Nyx, the Vandal Tech Smugglers, I love that location and I love that mission. It is a slog, even with a handful of people, but it is great fun, awesome loot. And I've had up until all through 4.4, I had a great experience, and then 4.5 broke the inventory. So when people say, oh, what about stability, and it's like, you can't hold them to 100%. They just said more stability, more playability. They're still going to miss the mark here and there, but if you can't look back on 2025 and say, yeah, the game was more stable, and yeah, the game was more playable, there's took care of a lot of bugs. A lot of things have improved. Are they 100% better? No. Are they better than where they were at the start of the year? Yes. And they told us flat out we weren't going to see as much feature development, and they weren't wrong. But here we are. We have engineering in before the end of the year. Now, does engineering have a long ways to go? Oh yeah, but we knew that. And if you didn't know that, you didn't have your expectations appropriately managed. If you thought that engineering was going to release and be flawless and perfectly balanced, I would have asked you, where the fuck have you been? That's not how Star Citizen does things, nor is that how any alpha does things. But the crazy thing is, even though there's lots of balance issues and lots of tuning and it isn't quite hitting the mark, in terms of functionality, I have run into no issues. And I haven't seen widespread reports of engineering stuff just not working. Yeah, there are bugs for sure. But as a system goes, what they did in internal development in order to get it working largely worked. The system functions. The things do what they need them to do. Now we're going to need a lot of balancing and fine tuning and more adjustments as things like Maelstrom, and the flight model and other aspects of engineering come online for sure. But what they got in works. I've fought fires, I've replaced components, I've repaired my ship and repaired components. I've played around with all the presets and everything. Open and shut doors, like it works. And it's a big step in the right direction. And it's something that they needed to get out and start getting us feedback. And we're going to see a lot of changes over the next year, along with things getting added in related to engineering, because they're not done. We still have to get life support. Power plants need to consume fuel, not just thrusters. We have to have gravity brought in, so you can turn off the gravity. The room system works, but it's that's part of life support coming online. There's a lot more to it, so it'll be interesting to see. So yeah, I also have in the works, and it's stuff that I started back in October. Hey, Citizen Tipitarius. I was honestly expecting them to take 2 years developing behind the scenes, so they're actually going faster than I was expecting. Oh, Seven, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Yeah, I mean, it's been in development a long time. It's been in development a long time. But it's one of those things where CIG and Star Citizen has always been moving forward on multiple doesn't do it justice, but a lot of fronts, and different aspects of those fronts move forward in sprints, like on the roadmap, getting ahead of themselves. And so they'll have engineers working on engineering for a long time, and then they'll pull them off to go work on something else, and engineering will lag, and so that's why it's taken so long. And it's a super complex system, and that's just for ships. Everybody forgets that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, because they're just now getting it in for ships, and it will work on everything, every point of interest, every space station, every landing zone, every distribution center, outpost, asteroid base. All of those will work off of engineering and the mechanics of engineering. They will require power, they'll have components, they'll have relays, the whole shebang. And so they have to not only finish the parts of engineering that we don't have, and they have to balance it for ships, but then they have to bring it out to the rest of the game. And if you want to start getting an idea of the sort of gameplay that you'll see from that, go run around a distribution center, the exterior portion, and find all the little consoles that you can interact with, and look at all the things that are embedded in the wall that look like components. and you'll be like, oh, yeah. And this is all around what is on the map as a refinery at some of the distribution centers. I was at Sakura Sun on Hurston last night. So much stuff, and it lets you press Y to interact, but then you can't do anything with it. And you can go up to those things and you can tell that it's a prop that is meant to be interacted with, and you'll be able to take away subcomponents and replace it, repair it, and all that. And so they have been setting up locations for a long time for engineering, because engineering has been in the main dev stream for quite some time, and they've been planning ahead. So that's like my dream gameplay for my 0 to hero. My alt is just being a handyman, a repairman. Citizen Tipitary says, yeah, I'm at 2 years without putting any new systems. Oh yeah, yep, yeah, that's fair for sure. Yeah, it's function wise, it's in a great state. And that shows that they've been doing a lot of hard work, and that their hard work has paid off, and letting it cook has paid off. And people are like, well, why isn't it more balanced? It's like, because that's not what you do in internal QA, not with in an alpha. Internal QA is testing it to make sure it works, and then PTU and all that. The balance part and all that comes from us, because we are still testing the game. As much as we may play it like a game, we're still testing it. Hey, Danger Hobo 07, good to see you. Happy New Year's, Devil. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun with engineering, and I haven't even done any like capital ship engineering, just been like medium to large ships at most, as well as the basic stuff with fighters. And even fighters are gonna have, we have a lot of ships that need their component passes and such. I don't know that the auto repair thing for fighters is going to stick around. I think that's there because not all fighters have their gold passes. So not all single seaters have their gold passes where they have accessible power components. So we'll see how that works. Let's go ahead and that year of no features being put in paid off. It's what at least some of us in the community have been advocating for a while. Yeah, they needed time to bug fix, to stabilize, to work on performance stuff. Obviously, a lot of that effort is not just Star Citizen, but largely Squadron 42. They just needed to slow their roll. They talked about that with Benoit. Jared did, and it paid off. And I think engineering is probably going to be a good example of what that payoff is going to look like for other follow-on features that we've been waiting for. Because instead of rushing them out the door like they had originally planned when they talked about it at the CitizenCon 2023, they've let them stew, and they've continued to work on them and iterate. And here's engineering. Well, radar and scanning for both FPS and ships, the flight model. There's a lot more stuff coming down the pipe. But yeah, so we'll cover the letter from the chairman tonight, and then I've got 2 segments that I'm working on. One is a lore equals gameplay segment that's going to be a bit of a doozy, looking at everything that we know in the lore regarding terraforming, both old lore and then what we've read or what little we've heard about Nyx 1. Yeah, they got a lot of ships in. It was a pretty big list down at the bottom of that engineering page. And the good thing is the ships that they didn't get in, the systems are still in there. Like all the hookups to make it work are in there. It's literally just art stuff, in terms of being able to have a hatch with animations that opens up and you can interact with it, and then voila, there's a component. So it's on the ship team, and the ship team is going nuts. So that's really good too. So we're gonna do a lore equals gameplay. I'm hoping next weekend. I'm gonna try and just do 1 episode, 3 episodes a month, and then interspersed with that gameplay streams. But next week, probably weekend, will be a lore equals gameplay on what we know for terraforming, not just Nyx 1, but the verse in general. And then following that, we're going to cover the big design doc for engineering, and we're going to circle back around for that to how that we're connect the dots between engineering and medical gameplay Death of a Spaceman. Because CIG has long said, I'm going to try and find the exact quote, but it's a thing that's been said and repeated, that they want us to treat our characters like we treat our ships. And people have glossed over that because we haven't treated our ships like anything else but expendable characters like in any other game. Now we have engineering, and soon we'll have Maelstrom coming in. And the whole point is for ships to not big die, not go boom, have that be a very infrequent thing, have them to be able to be repaired, and like with characters, have them heal and be revived and healed, but also to increase the time to disable instead of having time to kill. And so we're going to see that with our characters eventually too. And we have it, so now people need to start getting their heads wrapped around that with Death of a Spaceman and medical gameplay that they told us that they're working on just a few months ago. They told us that they're working on it right now. So I would be surprised if we saw more of that this year. But people need to start wrapping their heads around it. I've been screaming about it for years. People are like, oh, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. And it's like, CIG's been telling us about engineering for years and telling us that what they want from engineering and Maelstrom is long time to disable, ships don't go boom, and to really have you get an attachment to your ships. That's why they talked about it at CitizenCon 2024. They're going to implement a mechanic that allows you to essentially take a space taxi back to your ship, so that way you can repair it if you get injured and you have to get medically evacuated back to a clinic. Sweet, your ship will have its marker just like capital ships do now. You'll have your marker and you'll be able to take a space taxi and go back. You'll be able to have a space taxi come pick you up. Hey, my ship's disabled and I need someone to come get me so I can go back to civilization, get supplies, get what I need to repair my ship. Rather, because that will be a lot of times that will be the more appealing option than claiming it. That's what they're going for. People have been freaking out about engineering, but my limited experience with it has been mostly smooth sailing, other than that bug that eats jump modules. Oh wow, I haven't seen that. Is it specific ships or specific size QT drives and jump modules? I thought I've heard about it, but I thought I had it the other night because I was having trouble going through the jump point from Nix to Stanton, but then it ended up working out. Will Bruce Willis drive the space taxi? Oh, that would be cool. That would be funny. Yeah, multipass. I'm a meat popsicle. But yeah, so we're going to be this month. We're going to be talking about terraforming in Star Citizen, and then Ghost says every time you change a QT drive, you need to unequip the jump module first, otherwise game eats it. Aha. Okay. Well, I didn't do that. At least I don't think so. Maybe I did. Oh well, it seemed to work. And we'll be connecting the dots between engineering and medical gameplay and Death of a Spaceman this month. That's what's on the agenda, along with playing. Yeah, it's not the worst bug, just annoying. So let's go ahead and switch screens, and we will get into the letter from the chairman. All right. Ghost, good to see you. So I did end up getting my Asgard back. It took a while, and I had to server hop once in order to get the right ASD facility. Got my Asgard back. I did. Oh, bot. Hold on. Let me get it. Kill the bot. Let's see. Report. Bot. There we go. All right. They gone. Yeah, you got to have a certain level of patience with SC, and recognize when you've had enough and you need to take a break and go do something else. I've been doing that plenty. I've been balancing time between playing SC and building Lego with my son. He's just starting to get into big kid Lego away from Duplo, so we've been having fun with that. Um, but so I got I was at a ASD facility doing Project Hyperion with Ghost the other night. We had just gotten started, and I accidentally backed up and fell into the coolant chamber at the ASD facility when I got startled by the big snake. And of course, I'm an idiot, and I forgot to set my change my imprint to anywhere in Stanton. I forgot to move it from Levski because I just haven't died in forever. I've gotten plenty of injuries. Like that part's working. If you get into FPS combat and stuff, um, I almost never die. And I certainly hardly ever, go straight to death. I've been downed a couple of times, and mostly just due to fluke stuff. But I've, um, had to heal myself up, and I've gotten quite a few tier 3 injuries. I've only gotten like one tier 2 in a long time, but that part's working. It just needs a little bit more complexity and a little bit more depth, um, in the way engineering works. But so of course I big died at the bottom of the coolant tank, and I was, it was already getting kind of late, and I was tired. I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna call it a night. I didn't feel like going all the way back from Levski to Hurston space, and then I realized, oh, I left my Asgard at that ASD facility, and I had my Asgard all set up with all sorts of supplies and tools, and I already had a bunch of loot in there, and some upgraded components. And I was like, oh man, I really want to get that back. So I logged back in last night to go, and I just, spammed the missions until I found the right facility and abandoned the other ones. Went and got my Asgard back. Went and did a couple hauling missions, just because I wanted to visit some of the DCs in Stanton, and see if I could find some components. I've been told that you could get there's components that you could loot around the DCs, and so I found like 3 or 4 components. I found a bunch of loot. I always collect all the little hand minables and stuff, and did a couple missions. And I was doing a 2-part mission where I had to pick up at Everest Harbor and deliver at 2 different DCs, and I was about to pick up after dropping off at one DC to head to the next one, and then all of a sudden, boom, my ship, the Asgard, big kablooey. I had heard an explosion off in the distance. I was like, I don't know what that was. Probably somebody just shooting at each other, or maybe somebody crashed their ship. But like, it didn't make my ship shake or anything like that. I just heard it, and it sounded like it was far off. But ship blew up. I insta died. And I was like, what the hell just happened? And like, I was halfway through the mission. I've got a ton of loot. I've got like, I think I had 2 or 3 size 3 components and a couple of size 2 components, all military and stealth stuff that was grade B and C, I think it was. So I was like, oh, worth keeping. I'll take it. Sweet. Free components. Why not? So I respawned at Everest Harbor, and I'm like, what the hell? And then somebody pops up in chat, and they're like, oh, sorry about that, Tree. And I was like, what the fuck? He's like, yeah, I was testing out, I was showing off my Idris railgun to my buddy, and I didn't realize someone was in that ship because it didn't have someone's name on it. I'm like, ships don't have names on them anymore, you idiot. They haven't in ages. It just, it doesn't put the player's name on it. It just has, and so he was just floating around a DC shooting ships that he thought were abandoned. Well, he got a crime stat because he murdered me. But then I got the bug where chat like locks you in, and I couldn't, I was chatting back and forth, and so chat kept working, but the game was working around me, but I couldn't move. I couldn't move my character. I couldn't backspace. I couldn't do anything. And I was like, what the hell? I don't know what to do about this. And I just got frustrated, and I was like, F you, dude. Like, he's like, oh, I guess I'll go loot your body. You probably had a bunch of good stuff. I was like, you motherfucker. I a ton of great loot, and he just blew it all up because he wanted to show off his railgun. I was like, you son of a bitch. And so now, I had my Asgard all tricked out with all sorts of stuff, and now I have to start all over again. Didn't even get a chance to repair it. It was just, railgun, insta-boom. So engineering didn't fail me. People did. Humans. But yeah. All right, let's get into the letter from the chairman. So, if this is your first time reading the letter from the chairman, if you're new to Star Citizen or new to the letter of the chairman, Chris Roberts writes up one of these generally at the end of every year. Some years we get multiple updates. Other years we just get the one, but it's pretty consistent. The last several years we've gotten one at the end of the year as sort of a recap of the year and looking ahead to the next. And it's always CIG has gotten better about, and notice how I didn't say CIG is good at, or they have perfected the art of reining in Chris Roberts. Yeah, Operation True Read's the long one. But they have been better about curbing his enthusiasm in terms of putting out dates and overcommitting to things, and he speaks a little bit more generally now. Now, still slip ups, but a lot of the things that people get out of this that they get all up in arms about is subjective interpretation and creative interpretation to things that are meant much more literally. People looking for things to be mad about. So, letter from the chairman. As we wrap up 2025, I want to take a moment to reflect on the year and what it's meant for all of us. 2025 became the year of playability for Star Citizen, and a lot of people have given them crap about that. But when you look back at what CIG has said this time last year and then throughout the year, what they deem were their goals for playability, they have largely hit the mark. They really have. And while that may not have met your own expectations, if your expectations weren't tempered by what CIG said, you have to take some responsibility for that on your own. Now, if you thought that the game was going to be, vastly more playable, okay, that's, here or there. But if you look at it literally in terms of has playability improved in Star Citizen? Yes, it has. I think if you are going to be fair about it, you have to. There's no way you can say that the game is not more playable now than it was last year. The game largely works. You run into issues here and there, but things generally function pretty well, especially when you look at server meshing coming online and all that. It's pretty playable, server meshing and everything that goes with. Yeah, exactly. The cargo event, but that's the things like that are what tip the scale to a 6.57 versus a 9, and a lot of people are upset because they wanted a 9 out of 10, and it's like, wow, I never expected a 9 out of 10. I was aiming for 7, and I'm pretty happy with where we are. I still get frustrated with certain things, like the freight elevators, is the biggest. And then, the inventory being borked at a bunch of locations in 4.5, which is why the freight elevators aren't working at the stations for the missions and Nix. But, all in all, the game's a lot more playable for me. Things in general work a lot better. It was a year when more people played than ever before and spent more time in the verse than at any point in our history. That momentum did not happen by chance. It came from a focused effort to improve quality of life, performance, and reliability, and to make the gameplay experience more engaging and rewarding to return to. Yeah, if you avoided the event. Oh, and there was workarounds, as well as, if you worked with others, it really brought people together. It really did. And for, are there, should we not have to have the game being buggy bring us together? Yes. But I had a lot of fun working with other people in order to get stuff done, because you had to work around the issues of the game, and it still made good progress. I certainly didn't max it out, but when I was playing it, I still had fun. There was a lot of cooperation. But that they have told us multiple times that their metrics are, have not shot up, but it has been a continued on a very upward trajectory this year. And it's because they've been focusing on content and bug fixing and stability. The fact that server meshing is where it is right now, within a year, that's great. With all the things that it connects into it. Yeah, sometimes the bugs are just fun. Wacky fun. We started the year with 2 clear goals as a company: to improve stability and quality of life in Star Citizen while continuing to deliver regular content updates, and to push Squadron 42 toward beta and release in 2026. I'm happy to say we've made great progress on both fronts. So, again, it's important to take things literally. So he says, and to push Squadron 42 toward beta and release in 2026. We've made great progress on both fronts. He doesn't confirm at this point those things, but he does say that we made great progress on improving stability and quality of life. He doesn't say that we did, make the game perfectly stable and that we got all the quality of life things you would want in. He just says that they made progress, that they're happy with the progress that they made. That's it. That's anything else, is you not managing your own expectations, because CIG has articulated multiple times what they were going for. Star Citizen. On the Star Citizen side, 2025 saw a number of important pieces come together. We released not 1, but 2 star systems in a single year. Well, 1 and a third. Nyx has the Glacium Ring with Delamar and Levski and 2 jump point stations. There's like 4 other jump points to come in. There are 3 planets that are missing. There is only 1 type of POI for a single mission, single large scale mission in the Glacium Ring. And there are missions at the asteroid facilities, but you can't go into them. They're an exterior only. Eventually there will be an interior. So it's and even calling it a third of a system is pretty generous, I think. Just because you can go there. So I'm gonna throw some shade in that regard. I'm glad to be able to go back to Levski. I love Levski. I love Delamar. I made it my home. And I've been having a lot of fun in Levski. But it's to call it a system is, compared to Pyro, which released with all of Pyro, is generous. Welcomed the return of the beloved landing zone Levski and added new locations around the verse, opening more space to explore and spend time in. Server meshing was the key technology that made all this possible. With the release of 4.0.1 to the live environment on January 28th, we moved into a bigger, more performant and stable universe. And while there were a few hiccups with some legacy systems like the elevators and air traffic control, AATC still has lots of issues. Man, I can't wait until we move into the intended version of ATC and transit. Were a few hiccups with some legacy systems like the elevators and air traffic control that were built long before server meshing was conceived. Server meshing itself has been working flawlessly since the beginning. Yeah, when you look at it, it has been working really well. I mean, it's insane. With the crash recovery, the performance, the transitions, the launch of server meshing, static server meshing, exceeded my expectations in terms of stability and performance, for sure. A testament to the design and execution of the system by our network, backend, engine, and gameplay teams. Every day it handles tens of thousands of people playing concurrently in shared instances of up to 700 players. For something that simulates everything to the level of detail we do, at the scale we do, in first and third person, this is a truly mind-boggling achievement. Most other multiplayer games top out at between 50 to 100 players in a much more contained space than we allow you to explore in Star Citizen. And the MMOs with high player counts in the same instance don't simulate and render the world to the extent we do. Yeah, oh man, the list of quality of life stuff is so long. And that's like, people talk about the big ticket features, of why, there's no way 1.0 will be in 2027, 2028. I think it's the quality of life things. The mission system 2.0, the what I forget what verbiage they're using to describe the entirety of the transit system, the entirety of air traffic control, the entirety of the security system. It's a lot.
Just become best friends. Yep.
Hey, Aether Drift, thanks so much for the sub. Really appreciate it. For 9 months. And on that note, just going to remind everybody, I'm always streaming for charity, as you can see at the bottom. Always streaming for stackup.org. Need to get more consistent so I can raise more money for them, but I keep no monetization for myself. I donated all the Stack Up. I actually have a donation I need to make. We actually, that all that information at the bottom is out of date. That needs to be updated. But it was not a solid year for me with Stack Up, and it is what it is. I'm a stay-at-home dad with 2 part-time jobs. And I was gone a lot with the Army. But just know that I don't keep your money. I don't need it. I appreciate it, but I pass it on to veterans and members of the military who are struggling with depression, PTSD, and the struggles of being deployed and away from family, friends, and support systems. And doing that via the power of gaming and community. So thank you so much for your sub, Aether Drift. I appreciate your support. Appreciate you being a part of the community and hanging out with us. Yeah. And so here, we'll put the charity Stack Up. Did I get a warrior dividend? I think that was only for active duty folks. If it was for everybody, I haven't seen that shit yet. But kind of don't want it. Let's see. As multiple servers now manage our vast universe, 10. And I need to, next time I log in, I need to look to see what the current shard config is, because I haven't paid attention to it. The individual, I've been more looking at client-side performance, because Vulkan has been great for me. I know some people are having some pretty significant issues, but oh my gosh, everything maxed out for me on a 2K monitor. It looks incredible. It looks great, but it's like smooth everywhere. My performance is consistent everywhere. I could get a lot higher frames, but I don't, I don't want to dial down the look of it. I turned HDR back on. There's a lot of things that need adjusting for HDR. In certain places it looks really good, and other places the lighting or poor lighting and the lack of global illumination really shows, as well as HDR makes a lot of the UI on different ships, particularly Anvil, look like trash. And so it's like, I like the look of it in a lot of the game, but other parts it's like really hard to look at. Let's see. As multiple servers are now manage our vast universe, the individual server performance has greatly increased, creating a much better experience for all of you. Yeah, the server tick rate has made a big difference in terms of NPC performance, and I still see some rubber banding with some people. They've got some issues with network connectivity, but by and large, it's been a lot better. And due to its design with a separate service that tracks the state of the universe for all servers and clients, it allows us to quickly recover from a client or server crash without losing your progress, which is a huge quality of life win. Now we just need long-term persistence 2.0. That's the big issue. Is that long-term persistence is also a legacy system that really needs updating, so that way you don't get everything reset with every new patch. So frustrating. Yeah, frame time and frame rate on Vulcan is insane. Says Citizen Tipitarius. I've been getting anywhere from 40 to 120 FPS with a bit of tweaking my system. Highest I saw was 250 FPS before I clamped my FPS to save energy. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I run everything. I'm on a 9800 X3D and a 7900 XTX, and there are a few places where I dip. Really, only in Levski do I dip down into the 40s, and everywhere else I'm consistently minimum 50 to 60. Most places up to 100 or more. But that's average FPS. But the important part is my 1% and 0.1% lows are much improved with Vulkan compared to DirectX 11 now. And so how smooth it's been in 4.5 is a big change. And so like while my average FPS isn't gone up that much, the a little bit because of the 1% and 0.1% lows, the smoothness of the experience has improved, and it makes it feel more like a more released game, which is great. Yep. Yeah. Are you playing on 4K or what resolution are you playing on, Citizen Tiftarius? Okay, so same as me. Yeah, the 4080 Super is a great card. Yeah. Let's see. So we also shipped more mission content and in-game events than ever before this year. That included large-scale moments like teaming up to take on an irradiated Apex Valatar or coming face-to-face with Yormandi, as well as longer-running storylines that helped add depth and context to the verse. The environments continued to evolve as well. Expanded weather effects. I love the ring. It still has a little bit of janky bits here and there with the transitions, but it looks great. And planetary conditions help make locations feel more distinct and atmospheric, while improvements to characters, player interaction, and AI contributed to a more intuitive experience. We also expanded the vehicle lineup, introducing 24 new vehicles while continuing to improve the ships and ground vehicles already in your hands. Supporting all of this was a significantly increased pace of delivery compared to previous years, which is a good thing because lots of fresh new content. But that's where Jared brought it up with Benoit. That's where the very aged long-term persistence system really shows how out of date it is. Just because things persist through patches, but your ships get reset, your belongings get reset. It's like it's a wipe but not a wipe. And so we shouldn't transition from one patch to another and then have to re-equip your components. It should be as if nothing happened. And that's going to be a lot of work for them. That's a significant undertaking to make persistence do that. It needs 2.0. That's something that they're working on. They talked when they had that SCL back in September, the really long one. That was one of the big things that they talked about was LTP 2.0, and they've already begun work on that, but it's a big project. They've talked about it in the monthly reports as well. And I wouldn't expect it in for probably 2 years. I definitely don't think it'll happen this year. I think it's a next year thing. I think more of their focus is on dynamic server meshing and getting that in. And I think they want to get that in and everything that really interacts with that before they... I don't think they want to cause issues with dynamic server meshing by then having to make things backwards compatible. I think it would make more work for them if they put in LTP and then did dynamic versus, hey, we're going to get server meshing in and then we'll know, that way we know dynamic server meshing in, that way we know how everything works, and then we will update these systems in order to work with the new system. So ATC, the mission system 2.0, which they've talked about, long-term persistence 2.0, the new transit system, all that. So it works for static server meshing, and they're developing the newer systems alongside the development of dynamic server meshing, but I think we're going to get dynamic server meshing in first, and then the other things will follow on after that. So not this year, but next, I would believe. Exactly. Yeah, Danger Hobo. It's really disheartening because long-term persistence is a crapshoot of whether those things that you earned in game are going to persist across a patch, let alone, and it's not going to persist, in the way it was in the previous patch. It's going to get reset to your home location. You have to re-equip your components. You have to restock your ship, with engineering and all that stuff, having to restock your ship every time. Like, it makes it difficult to live out of your ship, which is my dream. That's what I want to do. Yeah. Let's see. We also expanded the vehicle. Okay, supporting all this was a significantly increased pace of delivery compared to the previous years. In 2025, Star Citizen delivered 11 major patches, more than 40 live publishes, 147 PTU builds, and several tech previews. This new pace allowed us to iterate faster, respond to feedback sooner, and deliver more content to play throughout the year. Several tech previews. They definitely wanted to do more tech previews. They didn't get as much feature and tech development done as they wanted. They said less. I think they got even less done than they had initially anticipated. And I think that's one way where CIG missed the mark, in that they, and you can't really preface that super accurately. They said less feature development, but and they left it vague. But I think even they didn't meet their own expectations. Yeah, 11 patches caused a lot of chaos. I remember Jared saying, I think when he was talking to Benoit, or maybe it was a different episode, that they said, it'll be about like half that, give or take, every other month or so, which I think is fine. 5 or 6 patches instead of 3 or 4. Well, it's still a lot of content, but I think they're doing that in order to have a good cadence to go alongside tech previews for all the feature work that they're finally catching up on. We closed out the year with the introduction of engineering in Star Citizen Alpha 4.5, adding new layers of interaction, decision-making, and responsibility to managing your ship. Engineering is an important step toward the deeper systemic experience I've always wanted to build. Okay, so this is an important statement. Yeah, it's way more than we used to get. Yeah, for sure. So I've seen multiple content creators speculate about how CIG is going to pare things back from what was originally intended, what they've talked about and stuff. And I keep asking them and asking, like, where are you getting this idea? And they're like, well, they're going to have to. I'm like, why? And what has given you what has brought this about? Well, they want to get 1.0 out. And I'm like, and that's why they gave us a list of all the things in 1.0. That's not everything. They told us in that presentation that the 1.0 list is not all the features. There's going to be a lot more that comes out after 1.0. That is just the base version of Star Citizen that they're going to call released. And no longer call it alpha. At no point in time have they ever given us any, idea that they would somehow make things less in depth. If anything, they've reinforced that. Like with engineering has always been a part of the plan. What they have, it has always been what they wanted to do. The exact way that it was that they wanted to do it, we never really knew. They had ideas, but the overall goals of the system and the way, how much depth and functionality would have, here we are. And it's even more so because it's not just ships. Back when they originally pitched it, it was just going to be ships. It wasn't going to be locations or anything like that. They've expanded upon that. It's more in depth now. Maelstrom. People think when people first saw Maelstrom, they're like, "Oh, this is amazing! I didn't realize that they're going to do this." That's always been the plan. They were talking about developing a material simulation back in like 2013, 2014. That's an idea that's like 11, 12 years old. It's not a new thing. That's always been part of the plan to have that level of depth. Um, the recently Ray's guide. I love Ray, but some of his takes, I'm like, what makes you think that they're going to do that? They haven't given you any reason to think. He thinks that they're going to make repair, refuel, rearm over. They're going to simplify it down. They're going to neuter it, and I'm like, why would they do that? Why would they? Well, and he's like, well, his thought is that they want to make everything as appealing as space stations, and I'm like, you think what we have in space stations is what we're always going to have in space stations? You think it's always going to be, basically instant? No, we have the tier 0, tier 1 version of repair, refuel, rearm in space stations. And one of the arguments he made was regarding auto cargo unloading. And again, what we have for auto unloading of cargo is not the final version. The goal is to have the little drones and or NPC piloted ships unload your cargo for you when you pay to have it done. Right now, it's just the basic version in order to get the system in, so that way you can press the button and the cargo gets unloaded, making it look cool and take longer and have more pros and cons, for the choice. That's what comes later. It's the same thing with engineering. It's the same thing with Death of a Spaceman. All of these systems are going to get more depth. And so when people say, well, they're going to neuter it, it's not going to be as what they always wanted. And I'm like, where have you gotten this idea? What about what CIG has released and developed has made you think that it's going to be less in depth than what they originally planned? Yeah, is there a final version of anything in this game? There will be when the game shuts down for good. And we don't know. We have a good idea of the overall design goals for all the different features and pieces of technology, what they want them to do, how that implementation comes to be. That's what's up for debate. What that actually looks like in the end. But thinking that because CIG, because CR said he wanted 1.0 out, within a year or two of Squadron's release, which is 2027, 2020, a year or two from 2026, Squadron's release is 2027, 2028. I think that's nuts. There's no way in hell, even with the 1.0 list that they have. But, again, even if we get in a lesser version at 1.0, that's just like any other feature that they've introduced. So they've told us about for years where, hey, this is the base version of the feature. This is to get the functionality in to allow for this, you to do this and to have this effect. But the animations and the increased complexity and all that other stuff, that comes later. They said that with medical, as an example. And so that's why this statement is really important, because CR has made similar statements regarding all these other core features and core aspects of the game that are, a lot of them are part of the 1.0 list. And engineering is a big part of that, because he has described those other things in the same way. Engineering is an important step toward the deeper systemic experience I've always wanted to build, where coordination and your crew truly matter. So what makes you think that with the depth of engineering and Maelstrom to come later and the other aspects of engineering to come later, what makes anyone think that the other aspects of that deep systemic experience in other parts of the game wouldn't live up to the same level of complexity, detail, and choice and simulation as engineering? I don't know. It just doesn't seem logical to me. Yeah, crafting alone, exactly. And crafting runs on engineering. crafting runs on the resource network. Crafting and refining, which is essentially crafting by a different name and a different mechanic, that all runs on the resource network. That's how that works. It just it requires blueprints and everything, but crafting was never even part of the original plan. Star Citizen has gotten more in depth, more complex, and people think that suddenly CIG is going to start reining themselves in and walking things back. And I'm like, that has not happened at any time in Star Citizen's history. They've changed how the implementation of something will work. For the Reclaimer. The salvage claud is not a salvage claud anymore. It's still a salvage ship, and it hasn't reached its final form. It's going to get a big old rework, hole stripping, hole munching. I forget what they call those two aspects of salvage now. That's not even its final form. That's just what they could get in before Maelstrom comes in. So yeah, I think people are smoking something and are forgetting what they've been complaining about with CIG for the last 10 years. They've been complaining about CIG taking too long to get features out and saying, well, CIG needs to start cutting stuff back, and CIG, or people complained about the feature creep. Okay, well, they haven't stopped yet. What makes you think they're going to stop now when they have added all these things in and they've grown in complexity? It's just, it would be wildly out of the ordinary for CIG. It just doesn't make any sense. The number of systems for 1.0 was reduced, yes. But they're still going to get all those systems. Eventually, that's why Genesis is a thing. So that way they can make all those star systems. It's the whole point. It's just the number of systems at release. But everything about Star Citizen has grown in complexity and grown in fidelity and simulation at every turn. It's CIG themselves said they have a problem with giving feedback without even trying the systems they're angry at. Oh yeah. It's a human thing. It's just the way humans are. And that's why they have the community team in order that filters through the feedback to find the feedback that's worthwhile. Because if you're just gonna be an old man yelling at clouds, okay, that's fine. CIG's just gonna ignore you. Yeah, and we all should be that aware, but we're not. Human's gonna human. But that's why, I always get into it with people regarding Death of a Spaceman and medical and healing, because they look at what we just got and they think that, oh, that's the end all be all, and it's like, no, they told you. They told us. They're literally just scratching the surface. They've told us that they want us to treat our characters like we treat our ships. They are now showing us how they intend us to treat our ships, what they want our experience for our ships to be like. And you can extrapolate. That's why I'm going to do the podcast segment on it. What that's going to mean for your character and injuries and healing, and medical gameplay and being a medic, and what we call sustainment of the fighting force in the military. Well, those clouds are really cheesing me off. Yeah. So let's keep reading. But I had to highlight that statement because that statement is very poignant to me, and it illustrates something that I think a lot of people are missing. While future systems such as Maelstrom's physically based materials and destruction, more realistic shield gameplay with generators and emitters, shield generators and emitters, and our upcoming crafting system will further deepen engineering. It was important to bring engineering into the verse now so we can begin refining the experience in the live environment. Oh yeah. Well, it's medical gameplay is definitely going to be affected by crafting for sure. Yeah. Um, but I would not be surprised that you're gonna have medics. But I think we're also going to have people who are um, essentially function as an armor. Um, uh, Not only crafting weapons and armor, but also upgrading them and repairing them using the crafting sort of system. Because if you think about how ships work with Maelstrom and the Maelstrom armor, and then your components and being disabled, you apply that to how our character armor uh, could work in terms of durability, a durability system, and subcomponents for it, because we know that's going to happen, as well as how that would affect what injuries you get and how. And then I'm gonna set my own select stock for people. Yeah, if you think about it, with you're a player character, and your chest piece takes a bunch of rounds from an AR, and you're wearing medium armor, and you essentially wear down the durability of that weapon, of that armor, or at like 50% durability, you get a tier 3 injury because you've got essentially the equivalent of bruised ribs. And then when it gets down to 25% durability, you've got more, essentially penetration. And now it slows down a round, but you get tissue damage beneath. The round penetrates, or the heat from the energy weapon, burns you and stuff, and then you get a tier 2 injury. And then when your armor is just, essentially 0 durability, it's offering no protection. That's when you get full penetration. That's when you get a tier 1 injury. And at any point, you can stop, and retreat, and you go back to your armor, you go back to your medic, and be like, hey, I need you to patch up my armor. And they do a field patch with a Cabrio SR, a tool, or the hand tool. They do a field patch of your armor to get some of its durability back up to prevent you from getting a worse injury. The medic treats your injury, treats your symptoms, or maybe you have a med bed nearby and you can get healed up, and you get back in the fight. A 30th century version of what we do now. Back in 2004, one of my best friends took a 3-round burst from a PKM directly to his chest plate. He had multiple bruised ribs. He was hurting, but it did not penetrate his chest plate. And, he had bruised ribs and everything like that. He could still fight. He was just essentially had what would be the equivalent of a tier 3 chest injury. And we kept a box of chest plate of sappy plates in our Humvees, and so we swapped out his sappy plate, and he got back into the fight. He didn't get evac'd. He just had to go rearward for a little bit. Medic checked him out. We grabbed, Humvee pulled up, dropped off a fresh sappy plate for him. He got some Motrin and water, and he was back in the fight. Back in the fight. He was pissed. Same thing applies. Yeah, and that's how it works in real life. And the game can absolutely fake that, simulate it. And that's what we're doing with ships. And CIG has told us that we're going to be treating our characters the same way we treat ships. Increased time to disable. No, death is intended to be rare. Increased complexity and choice. That light armor means you can get a higher tier injury a lot easier. But we have much better stamina, much better speed, etc., etc. Your signatures are drastically reduced. It's hard to catch on radar. There's so much choice and variability. And if they can do that for ships, they can do that for characters. And that's absolutely part of the plan. Okay, sorry, tangent, but I thought it was worthwhile. Pardon me. Finally, as a Christmas surprise, we quietly released an experimental VR mode in Alpha 4.5. That was not on my bingo card at all. I thought for sure they'd tech preview that, but good for Sylvan. Solid, Sylvan and team. I know there's a lot of VR people that are really into VR. I'm super happy for them. And I'm hoping that they get the performance where they need it quickly, but I also hope that the knock-on effect of improving the performance for VR will also mean that we get even better performance, with Vulkan. If it's already as good as it is right now, imagine how good it could be, in a year. Yeah, I can't do VR. It's one of the only things that makes me motion sick. But I I know a lot of people that really enjoy it, and I'm very stoked for them. Um, what began as a passion project quickly caught people's attention, and the response from those who have tried it has been genuinely exciting. I've long believed that Star Citizen is a natural fit for VR. It's been something that they've been wanting to do and has been intended for a decade. Not a new thing. Because of how we build our worlds, we physicalize almost everything, keeping first and third person views consistent in a shared universe. That approach takes more effort, but it makes the experience feel grounded and real, and it highlights the value of those design choices in a way few other technologies can. Being able to experience ships, environments, and equipment at true scale with natural movement and directional audio adds a level of immersion that's difficult to capture on a traditional display. All the detail we put into our environments, props, ships, and gear really pays off when you're up close and personal. I only get motion sick when I do this, followed by this. This is still an early and experimental step, and there's plenty we want to improve. We need to continue dialing in the diegetic UI so it feels comfortable and readable in VR. Yeah, the UI still needs a lot of work. I the difference in how the UI looks from uh, from SDR to HDR is substantial, and that needs work. Yeah, I heard Zero State go on a rant about how much time CIG wastes on detail, but VR is the reason why. Oh, and it's not just it's not just VR, but like VR takes your ability to appreciate the level of detail to another level, and people like that level of detail. I hate to say it, but people enjoy it. People like Screenshot Citizen is a thing, and it's free marketing for CIG. And yeah, makes things take longer, but it makes the game feel more real. It feels more of an experience when it looks that good and sounds that good. And the interaction is that um, real, diegetic. Um, yeah, I certainly enjoy it. Let's see. So it feels comfortable and readable in VR. Refine FPS controls so your input controls your body rather than where you're looking, and add more dedicated control support. These are solvable problems and ones we're excited to tackle. It's also worth mentioning that the new VR mode would not be possible without the engine and graphics work happening behind the scenes. Ongoing optimization efforts by our core technology group and our transition to Vulkan have made a meaningful difference, and without that work, I don't think VR would be running as smoothly in its first iteration. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, people complain when the detail isn't there. People complain about graphics and stuff, and like, oh, these are crappy graphics, and they complain about studios taking shortcuts, on things, and in this day and age, or you see the side by sides of, how good a scene looks in a game in 2025 versus in 2015. Pardon me. It's the thing. All of this, combined with a hard focus on bug fixing and quality of life features, has made Star Citizen more fun, stable, and playable than ever. It is. It is more fun, stable, and playable than ever. Does it still have a long ways to go? Abso-fucking-lutely. But it is a substantial improvement over this time last year. And the numbers back it up. We had record-setting engagement this year with more than 64 million hours played in Star Citizen, up from 48 million in 2024. So that's a 33% increase. That's nuts. You set new records in peak concurrency and unique daily users, and we saw huge increases in every metric, including 40 to 60% increases in average daily users and average peak concurrency. We also saw huge improvements in server stability with 57% fewer player disconnections per 1 million player hours compared to 2024. That's how we know server meshing and PS and crash recovery is working. To see that number drop that substantially, and they're going to continue to improve that as they continue to develop server meshing. I finally broke down and bought Ark Ascended. Looks like garbage. Yeah, there are certain games where I go for the sort of old school aesthetic. I love pixel art games. I think it's nostalgic for me. It's some games it's an art style, and other games it's just you don't have any artists working for you. 2025 truly was the year of playability for Star Citizen. I think more due to stability than quality of life and functionality. But I think I think the improvement is weighted. You did have an improvement in playability, but I think it's much less compared to the improvement in stability. But combined, the average, is definitely there. Yeah, SC has style. Some things are not for me, but that's more subjective. But in terms of how much effort they put into the style and the level of detail, it's definitely there. Pardon me. On to Squadron 42. Squadron 42. On the Squadron 42 front, our focus throughout 2025 was to build on the progress of 2024 and what we showed at last year's CitizenCon, by bringing the game to content complete and closing out remaining core tasks in preparation for beta. All chapters are now fully playable from beginning to end, and we've been playing through the game ourselves regularly. Squadron 42 is a large game, over 40 hours in length, which is more than originally estimated. They've been saying 20 to 40 hours for years, and now it's over 40 hours. And so the game itself has grown. And it's becoming increasingly clear how special it will be once the remaining polish, optimization, and bug fixing is complete. Polish, optimization, and bug fixing. That's it. A big part of what makes this possible is the technology we've built at CAG over many years. The ability to move seamlessly from on foot into a vehicle you can fly and move around inside, down to a planet or across star systems, all without loading scenes, creates a level of immersion that's very difficult to replicate. That combination of close-up interaction and galactic scale is at the core of what will make Squadron 42 so unique. Equally important is the quality of the content itself. From writing and performance capture to characters, environments, ships, lighting, sound, cinematics, and design, the level of care across the entire game is something I'm incredibly proud of. Combined with deeply interactive systems, it creates an experience that pulls you into the world and keeps you there. Hopefully you guys can't hear my dog snoring. Back in the day, a couple years ago, when I first started streaming, actually even longer than that. I didn't really have a handle on like the filters and everything and how that works and dampening the background noise. And so like the older streams, the older podcasts, you could routinely hear my old dogs snoring in the background. They've since passed, but now I've got a boxer over here and he is passed out. Community. What continues to make... Yep. Yeah. Community. What continues to mean the most to us is the community that has grown alongside this journey. You have given us your time, shared your perspectives, and chosen to take part in something that is truly bigger than all of us. It is the next great adventure, where millions of like-minded explorers get to live among the stars, and we could not ask for a better crew. Throughout the year, hundreds of Bar Citizen events took place around the world, creating spaces where stories were shared, friendships were formed, and a shared passion for this universe came to life. We were fortunate enough to attend 24 of these in person. I think that's great. I love that they interact with the community as much as they do. I've been to 2 Citizen Cons now, 2023 and 2018, and those were just absolutely incredible experiences. And if you can make it to a Bar Citizen, a big one, especially if CIG is there, or if you can, form a community where you are, or if you could ever make it to Citizen Con, it's worth it. It's so much fun to talk in person. We've got a great little Bar Citizen group here in Boise, and I really cherish the times that I get to hang out with them. Not as often as I'd like, but Space Dad life. What are you going to do? Throughout the year, hundreds of Bar Citizen events took place around the world, creating spaces where stories were shared. We were fortunate enough to attend 24 of these in person, and each one was a reminder of the care and creativity you bring to this community. These moments matter. They help keep us grounded in why we do what we do, and they continue to inspire and motivate us in ways that are truly rewarding. That same energy carried through online. You organized racing events, RIP, bring it back, can't wait. Watch parties, social meetups, and more throughout the year, bringing people together no matter the time zones or continents. CitizenCon Direct was a standout moment for us, with dozens of watch parties happening around the world simultaneously. Despite the distance between us, it generally felt like we were more connected than ever. Thank you for the time, patience, and passion you continue to share with us. Whether you joined us at an event, helped test to build on the PTU, organized the gathering, or simply spent time experiencing the universe with others, you are at the center of our ambition and what makes this entire journey possible. Eye on the horizon. Closing statements. All right, this is where the real meat and potatoes are. Pardon me. Looking ahead to 2026, our focus remains clear. We'll continue improving stability and depth in Star Citizen while expanding and connecting core systems that shape how you play. From engineering to inventory, crafting, social tools, and other foundational features, alongside expanding the playable universe itself. So, connecting core systems that shape how you play. So, engineering to inventory. So they're going to continue to expand upon inventory. They're going to, I assume, I think it's a safe assumption that we're going to see life support make it into the game, along with the aspect of your power plant consuming fuel, not just thrusters. And I think we're going to see a lot of refining of the engineering. It's the initial go, and so I think we're getting the easy version. I think things are going to get a little bit harder as things go, a little bit more punishing, I'd say. The new inventory system seems to be moving along really well, and we are in dire need of it. The developer UI that we have is just it's lacking. It's really the performance for it is really bad, as well as the how perform it is, not only from a graphical perspective, but in terms of accessing the back end. It has a lot of room for improvement, and so those two areas have a long ways to go, and I think we're going to see that with the new inventory system. Hey, or Northern Trooper 07, good to see you. Happy New Year, buddy. I was just talking about our little Bar Citizen group. Hopefully we can get together again soon, and I can actually be in attendance. I just learned with my new OLED monitor how gorgeous SC is. Oh man, I bet. Yeah, it's gonna be a while before I upgrade my monitor. 2K is okay. I really want 4K, but I don't want to upgrade to a 4K monitor until I see where performance gets with my current 7900 XTX and where CIG can go with Star Citizen. Because I don't want to upgrade to 4K and then have a less than good experience. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with tech in the next several years, because holy crap, that market's getting shook up. Yeah, I'm a 7900 XTX. It's a Sapphire, whatever. Thank God for VODs. Yeah. And I'll be at work tomorrow, so I won't be able to get this one episode up tomorrow, but I'll try and have it up on Saturday afternoon. And I intend to be, yep, Nitro Plus. Yep. Yeah, it's a great card. I do think I'm gonna delit it and maybe upgrade the fans and put a better upgrade the paste. But like, even with everything maxed out right now on Vulcan, on 2K in Star Citizen, my GPU temp hovers in the high 60s, low 70s. It's the only thing I worry about is my GPU memory temp, and it doesn't track. I don't have I'll have to take a look at hardware info to see look at hotspot. Yeah, I need to look at the junction temp, but my GPU memory temps will get up to high 80s, low 90s. And so I need to reinstall HW Info 64 and look at my GPU hotspot and junction temps. Because on my 3090, my memory and junction and hotspot temps were generally about the same. But if I can get my card a little bit cooler, I think it'd probably be worth it. I just haven't had any time to play with it. I've been enjoying building Lego on what little downtime I have. But I'm also in no hurry to do it, to do anything with it. But if I can get some more longevity out of the card, all the better. So engineering to inventory, crafting. So back at I think it was Con 42 in May, June, and then again later this year, we know that crafting. What is this? Go away. We know that crafting is the next thing to come. They wanted to have a tech preview for crafting by the end of this year. Obviously, we didn't, or end of last year. Obviously, they didn't make it, but it's probably coming soon. And so I doubt we'll hear anything this month, but I imagine it's a neck and neck race between crafting and radar and scanning of what's going to go into tech preview first. Because if you watch the 5-star videos, Shadow Patch Notes, if you go into Arena Commander, you can see a little bit of how FPS radar and ping works. That accidentally got left in. I don't know if it actually got pulled all the way out, and if it's only with certain equipment. But so it's close. And we also know that the first iteration of crafting is going to be kind of like the first iteration of engineering. It'll be limited in scope, but that just means that we'll get, the first iteration of crafting after the tech preview, and it'll be like FPS gear, and maybe a little bit of other stuff, probably stuff you can carry with your hands, that kind of thing. And then it will expand basically every patch after that. We'll get larger items and more items and larger crafting machines, I guess. But that and radar and scanning are two of the biggest feature things that I think we can expect in 2026, which is huge for gameplay. FPS radar and scanning and the new the concurrent update to ship radar and scanning to work in the same way is going to make a huge difference for gameplay. The social tools. We haven't heard hardly anything about social tools other than a little bit of development in the monthly reports about how they're laying it all out and planning it. And so it'll be interesting to see if we can get an update on what that rollout's going to look like. And how far into development they are, but they're looking ahead into 2026. So it's making good progress. They have a certain level of confidence to include it in the list next to engineering, inventory, and crafting, and other foundational features. alongside expanding the playable universe itself. So we heard about this at CitizenCon, but so this is going to be my big prediction. Tell me that new Q travel system is coming out this year. You know I need it. Oh yeah, well, and that's the other tab I have up here is Yogi's. Well, we'll read this at the very end because Yogi talks about that kind of. Oh yeah, just let me group up with randos to do the new Death Star Trench Run content, please, CIG. Yeah, that looks like great fun. But when they say alongside expanding the playable universe itself, so dynamic server meshing and Genesis. I really think that the servers are probably starting to get pretty full in terms of the amount of content that they can have loaded onto every server. And with part of the development of dynamic server meshing is the development of the instancing tech that CIG wants, which is dynamic instancing. Right now, we don't have dynamic instancing. That's why you have to wait in a queue for hangars and stuff. Partly for the actual physicalized gateway, but also the number of hangars at space stations and landing zones and stuff is a fixed thing, and so they're always there. They don't pop up and down. And so one way they can get very much more efficient with content and what they can have loaded into what they can have in a shard and how they can keep server performance up is to allow for dynamic instancing of that content, which then leads on to dynamic server meshing. Dynamic instancing will allow us to have, not have 100 Onyx facilities spread across Stanton, but a handful. But it will still seem like there's 100 of them, but there'll only be a handful of them, and they will only get loaded onto servers as needed, and they will get loaded onto, the dynamic content will get loaded onto servers based off of which servers have the performance overhead. And they will only scale up the servers in order to based off of the amount of demand, and that's not only player demand, but that's in order to scale up essentially the real the persistent universe part, the open universe, as well as what the layer, the upside down layer of the instance content that goes alongside that or underneath it or on top of it, built on top of it. And so that's how they can go from static server meshing before dynamic server meshing, but then add a lot more content because they can add in instance content as well as dynamically instance content, as well as the stuff that's already in. They can change it over to dynamically instance content to get some of that overhead back, if that makes sense. A much more efficient system than what we have now, as well as much more scalable, and that's even before they've got full dynamic server meshing. But it takes the scalability and the optimization of dynamic server meshing to another level. But I also think that not only are we going to see the growth of Nyx, the Nyx system, with the planets, as well as the Keeger belt and lots more POI, like they talked about that in the two asteroid belts. But I think we will also simultaneously see them going back and reworking some of the planets in Stanton as the narrative surrounding the new terraforming tech evolves. So we shall see. I'm hit or miss on whether I think we'll see Castra next year. I think we will by the end of next year, or sorry, the end of next year, the end of this year. I keep forgetting it's now 2026. I think we're going to see it. But it's I think it's too early to make a really solid guess. Especially because with Genesis, what they're showing us was Nyx 1. I hope that they give us, show us the work in progress for Nix 2, and I would really like to hear an update on what Genesis means for gas giants and non-terrestrial planets like Nix 1 and Hurston and Microtech. Because we've got Genesis 1, as well as the planets of Pyro, the rocky planets of Pyro. But to have a smog planet in Nix 2, which we don't really have, and what that means for the future of smog-like planets, and what the Genesis means for gas giants. I want an update on that, because if they're going to finish out Nix this year, they need to do those things, and I don't think they're going to do them in the old way. Well, I think if they're going to get Castor in, I think they can do the whole thing. Because the difference is, and people forget that the people that do landing zones are an entirely different team from the people that do the planets themselves. And so it's only 2 planets. And I imagine maybe we'll see a couple moons get thrown in there and get added in. There's no asteroid belt. And I don't think they're going to add one in just because they just updated us on Castra. It'll just be interesting. But I think when you look at Bullseye, I think Bullseye is going to be the rocky planet version in terms of toxicity and hazardousness equivalent of Nix 2. Yeah, one and Cypher. I really want to. I think the issue with the flare is, I think that it needs engineering in to work properly, but those things aren't mutually exclusive. The teams working on Genesis and the Planet Tech are not the teams that would be working on the flares for Pyro. That's an entirely different thing, and so the flare for Pyro doesn't beget Castor coming in. It's just a different group of people working on something different. But not only do we need the flares, but like the room system that makes the atmospheres different, and makes them, right now it's like it's either there's air you can breathe or there's not, and we need a lot more differentiation than that. And so that system needs to get upgraded and have more fleshing out done, because the planets of Pyro, yeah, you can land on them now, but they're still meant to be hazardous to your health, and right now they're really not. The ease of which you can run around without the environment harming you is far too great. We're in easy mode when it comes to survival in Star Citizen, and we need to start taking big steps in the direction of making survival more difficult in places that are not meant to be habitable. Because that's the difference, is people see like on the star map and the Galactopedia, they say, oh, it's not habitable, and so there's nothing there. And it's like, no, not habitable just means you can't walk around on it without a spacesuit on. There's still, we have places that aren't habitable right now that have plenty of POI on them, and you can walk around and drive around on them and everything. But it just means that the environment is not, for humans, sans spacesuit or even sans vehicle. And so the inhabitability of much of the verse needs to take a big leap. LA, Detroit, Chicago. Yeah. But that's a big part of the gameplay. It is making sure that you plan for those environments. And that you're aware that, oh, hey, you keep an eye on, you have your shields up, to watch out for that flare, or you max out your shields, because when we start conserving hydrogen fuel, because of how much power it sucks out by running your shields all the time, you're not going to fly around Pyro with your shields up all the time. But if you don't get them up in a hurry, or maybe you don't have strong enough shields, and you don't get into the shadow of something in Pyro. Like the flare should make, the flare should hurt. And that should matter for if you're on the ground on a planet with a thin atmosphere or a moon. Let's see. So let's keep going. Server meshing will become dynamic. He is committing to dynamic server meshing in 2026. Now, do I think this is the full dynamic server meshing V2 or tier 2? No. But I do think that the tier 1 version of dynamic server meshing, which is still a big step, huge step, and really all we need for 1.0, I think that is where we're going to get in 2026. If we go beyond that, I'll be really impressed. Yeah, those things work together to make the system what it's meant to be. But they're not going to tell the planet tech teams to not work on the planets, to not continue to build out the universe, just because other teams that need to work on things like the flare or the atmosphere aren't where they need to be. And that might be a part of the Genesis tech. They haven't talked about that. That's the thing, is they haven't talked about the way they haven't talked to the Genesis tech builds the planet for them with the parameters that they set based off of real data. And that real data will mean the atmosphere, but we don't know if what they're going to do with that. We don't know if when they launch Bullseye or Nyx 2, if it's going to have those atmospheric conditions or not. They talked about it, and so we think it will, but we don't know if when they release those planets, if they want it to be that level of difficulty, because they can change it later, if that makes sense. But they're never going to tell this team to not do their work because this part isn't ready. It's why Pyro released without the flares. They had them and they turned them off because they weren't where they wanted them to be. They weren't doing what they wanted. We didn't have engineering. Remember, engineering was supposed to come with 4.0. And so that's why part of the reason I think they turned off the flare stars, because we don't have engineering. So it could just be a matter of time. But the full experience is a conglomeration of things. And like I talked about earlier, CIG is a whole bunch of different teams all working towards the same eventual goal, but they are moving along those fronts at different speeds and sometimes leapfrogging each other, but they don't stop. They're not stopping. They're not going to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to work on something. I'm not going to work on my thing because this isn't ready. We're going to get this thing in, and these people will catch up. There's very few things that are mutually exclusive like that in CIG's development of Star Citizen. Do I want it? Yeah, I absolutely want more survival elements in Star Citizen for sure. But it's those are things that are multifaceted, that are the flare star isn't impacted by the planet tech team. The environments of the planets is, but it remains to be seen at what difficulty level those planets will get released at, because they don't want to make the planets super difficult without giving us more of the first-person tools to be able to survive that stuff. And they can always change the atmosphere later at the click of a button, essentially. A few clicks. It's more complex than that, but far easier than it used to be. So, back to dynamic server meshing. So this is huge. Server meshing will become dynamic, allowing the mesh to reconfigure in real time based on player activity and server load. It should say shard load, but server load. This evolution is foundational to supporting the large-scale group experiences we've always envisioned and will enable us to expand the universe even further. Our goal is to have thousands of players in the same shard universe instance. And eventually it's going to be many, 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 many thousands. Components of these server meshing systems are also being leveraged to deliver instance areas and experiences, allowing our designers to craft balanced content that integrates seamlessly into our universe. And they talked about that at was it CitizenCon, or was the big SCO with Benoit? How dynamic server meshing won't be like 4.0 where it gets turned on all at once. It'll get rolled out in phases, with instancing being one of those phases. So it'll be interesting to see if we get more verbiage, more explanation on how that rollout is going to look this year. But that's huge. That's incredible. That they're committing to that. That means they're very confident. And being that static server meshing per CIG, per Benoit, static server meshing with PES was a bigger hurdle and is more work than what dynamic server meshing is. That's the crazy part. That in less than 2 years' time, we're going to go from static server meshing to dynamic server meshing, when static server meshing, PES took 4 years, 5 years, essentially. Well, longer than that, but the road before that was substantially longer. And in 2 years' time, we're going to go from static to dynamic. As we expand outward, we're also building deeper. Genesis planets represent our next step in planetary tech, offering breathtaking worlds with significantly improved graphical fidelity and denser, more dynamically assembled biomes. These planets are driven by the rules of nature and our designers, creating ecosystems that feel alive and authentic. So, again, part of it is a lot of the data comes from real, like, astronomic data. Yeah, right. That's the right word. Like they've got scan data for gas giants. They've got scan data for rocky worlds. They've got scan, for Mercury and smog planets like Venus. All that data is what they're using to build those planet types, and then the designers can tweak them to make them how they would want to be, because obviously we know that not every smog planet is the same. Not every rocky planet is the same. Not every terrestrial planet is going to be the same, and so on. Gas giants versus ice giants, what have you. Creating ecosystems that feel alive and authentic, combined with Starkitect locations throughout. So that's the other big thing, is they are committing, and these are the big things we need to hold them to, and I'm going to do it. Just like we have held them to the stability and playability focus, and they really didn't hit as much of the playability mark as they did the stability mark. Well, this year, we need to hold them to these things. Are they actually going to get dynamic server meshing in? Well, they seem pretty confident. All right, we'll see. Are they actually going to get the dynamic instancing in? We shall see. They sound pretty confident. They've already been working on it. Are they going to get all the Genesis planets in that they, for Nyx, and maybe more, maybe some of Stanton, maybe Kastra? Are they going to get Starkitect in? That's huge. That they're, because Eye on the Horizon, we're still talking about 2026. That's the context. They would be hard pressed to backpedal and say, well, we weren't talking about 2026 for Starkitect. Really? Huh. So I'm pretty sure that that's what they're talking about. Now, to be fair, Starkitect is just a logic system using Genesis data to deploy POI in logical fashions based off of the Genesis data, and based off of what the designers say for that planet, using pieces of locations that we already have, and then that they're already still developing. So we are going to see a lot more locations and a lot more variety in terms of how the locations are put together, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that you see where you're like, oh, I've seen this before. But we also know that they are working on different archetypes, location and location archetypes, both in space and on planets. Combined with Architect locations throughout, Genesis planets deliver both the environmental depth and the gameplay density we need. Supporting this will be a new AI population management system. Now, this is saying um, a management system for the AI population. It's not talking about using AI. It's saying talking about a new system that manages the AI population in game. Because right now they spawn in and out, and they still get stuck on certain behaviors, um, and they don't always work as intended, especially in landing zones. Um, we have issues with NPC spawning at POI and missions working, um, as well as they need to be able to uh, spawn and despawn reliably, both in terms of function, of playability, your interactions with them, but also their big drain on performance. And so when people aren't someplace, everything needs to stream out, and that AI logic needs to turn, go away, and remove that overhead. But like, this has been a big complaint from a lot of people, where you go to planets, places without atmosphere, and you see people running around without spacesuits and helmets, and they're just fine. And so this management system is kind of like Star Architect, where we'll use the Genesis data, um, both in terms of nature and designer data, to say, this is what the populations will look like here. This is what what they will be wearing. This is what they will be doing. These are what behaviors they will have. These are what factions they'll belong to, and so on. So again, big, huge promises. Genesis, Star Architect, dynamic server meshing, dynamic instancing, and the AI population management system to make the universe feel more alive and more real. Appropriate to their local environment and enables more complex interactions between agents. This approach to building living, breathing planets is key to scaling the game to the heights we're aiming for. We're also upgrading core systems that have been with us for years. As part of our item recovery work, inventory, insurance, and cross-patch persistence are all getting significant improvements. So this is the item recovery, but rolled into the updated inventory, the insurance system, updating that, as well as cross-patch persistence is long-term persistence 2.0. The AI management system is, they've talked about saying this is what we need to do in the future, but they haven't talked about the system. They haven't talked about developing it. They haven't given it a name. And here they are essentially dropping it into the context, saying that this is what's coming in 2026. So they've got lofty goals. And I think part of this confidence is due to the shift, development focus shifting incrementally even more back from Squadron back onto Star Citizen this year. I think that's where this confidence is coming from, is having more bandwidth, more manpower to be able to do these things. The focus is on making it easier to interact with your belongings while improving the stability and speed of these systems overall. These are integral parts of any MMO experience, and getting them right matters. So, again, we're going to have to come back at this time next year and look at what the experience is like. Is your inventory and everything getting, reset? Things are persisting through the patch, but they're getting reset and getting put back in your home inventory after each patch. Is the inventory lagging? Are you having to wait for your, movement of things from your backpack to your inventory to update, because it takes forever and sometimes there's a delay? How's insurance going to look in a year's time? What's item recovery? We looked at how item recovery was going to look at. They updated us on that earlier this last year. What stage are we going to be at this time next year? For Squadron 42, our priority remains quality and polish as we move toward beta and release. They haven't hit beta yet, but they're moving towards beta release. They're still working on quality and polish. We're confident in the direction the game is headed and are fully focused on delivering. We know many of you are eager to play, and we're looking forward to putting it in your hands. And I say that because I've heard people say, well, Squadron 42 is in beta. And it's like, well, no, that's quite literally not what they said. Read the words. Oh, hold on. Where's my thing? Gotta do the thing. Wait, where is it? Nope. Oh, no, I remember now. Do you motherfuckers read? No, you don't. Okay. We know many of you are eager to play, and we're looking forward to putting it in your hands. We don't plan on a long, drawn-out marketing campaign, as we've already done our share of trailers and gameplay previews. When it's time, you and the rest of the gaming world will hear a lot more from us. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, well, the inventory, I've had it with the, I haven't noticed it with the inventory UI, like at locations, but I've been running into issues where the freight elevator UI freezes, and then you have to back away from it and restart. It'll do it like multiple times, and like I have to do movements and segments. Yeah, it's been 4.5 has had some quirks that are really annoying. But 4.5 is the first big pull, first update from the main dev branch of the engine in over a year. Like 5 quarters, which is crazy. And so it's frustrating given how stable and how much there has been a playability improvement up until 4.5. But at the same time, I kind of expected it, because I was like, well, we need to do this. We need to rip the Band-Aid off. We need to get this big update from the engine side of things, because a lot of its improvements from Squadron coming over and such, and it holds back other aspects of feature development. But it's definitely caused a lot of quirks, and they really need to get those things fixed. And I hope we get a 4.5.1 fixing those things, this month. How do you feel about the marketing campaign content? Some streamers feel that they sound market for a standard time to get word of mouth. Traditionally, the big the drawn out marketing campaign thing is 6 months to a year. I think this means that they're going to do less time, and I think that it's partly a strategic decision, in order to avoid stepping on the marketing of other studios. So we'll see. Yeah, it's annoying but not broken. Yeah, 4.5 is annoying but not utterly broken, at least not by the same standard that many of us would call utterly broken. It's frustrating because I was having such a great experience in 4.4, but it just means that it's the 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 4.5 has 1 step back, but 2 steps forward in other areas, and then that 1 step back will come forward again in the next patch, probably. And it is what it is. We've been dealing with this for ages. It's progress is progress. When it's time, you and the rest of the gaming world will hear a lot more from us. I am looking forward to seeing the marketing that they do. So yeah, thank you for continuing to share your time, your feedback, and your passion for this universe. Star Citizen and Squadron 42 exists because of all of you, and that is something I will never take for granted. From all of us at Cloud Imperium Games, Imperium Games, we wish you a happy holiday season and a great start to the new year. Well, they have always they're sitting on over $60 million in cash reserves, and when that investment was initially made, it was said that it was earmarked for marketing and platform costs. Essentially, they knew that when they got to static server meshing, that it would be more expensive for them to platform the game due to the fixed number of servers. And right now we have running 10 we have 10 servers to run for 700 people, whereas it used to be 1 server for 100. And so it's more expensive to host the number of people playing now than it used to be. It's more than the Calders and multiple others. They have, it's a whole group. It's a almost not a conglomerate, but it's the Calders and several others that have invested and made repeated investments, including up until this last year. They've invested more money and they got a loan. And they've looked, the investors, like there's a big, whatchamacallit, there's the financial report that we get, the player facing one, and then there's the audit that gets done of CIG, both for the UK government and their investors. The investors have not only put more money into CIG in the last year or two, I think it was, but they also CIG took out a loan from them for $10 million to be repaid in 2027. Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is CIG gets plenty of free marketing. They don't do a whole lot of marketing, and they've made, they've had nearly $1 billion in revenue in 13 years. But enough people stream it and play it, and it's a unique enough experience, and it's continuing to grow. And so there's a lot of organic marketing that CIG doesn't have to spend a lot of money for Squadron 42 to be a success. It would be a waste of money if they spent a lot of money on marketing, especially when you look at the marketing budgets of the bigger studios and how much money they throw on marketing. And when you look at it, it's like most people don't hear about games from the big marketing campaigns, from watching TV ads and stuff. Most gamers don't follow that stuff these days. So the things have changed. And so they'll do some marketing, but, they also probably aren't trying to hit, a fraction of the sales goals of GTA 6. That's, they don't need to be that successful to hit that kind of goal to be successful. So yeah, but that is it for the 2025 letter from the chairman. And so this has been a little bit of a shorter show, just because we're just covering the letter, and it's definitely not the longest letter that we've gotten. But I will try to get this episode up on my YouTube on Saturday, and then I do intend to stream and actually play the game on Saturday. I'm hoping I can get a few people to join me and group up, maybe do Hyperion, just because the Vandal Tech Smugglers, the inventory, and the freight elevators are broken. So definitely going to do some more, or try and get some more group content together. Yeah, he's saving for the 2026 letter. But yeah, so that's all I have for tonight. I need to hit the hay because I have to wake up early. I have to work tomorrow, but I appreciate all of you guys coming and hanging out with me this evening. And appreciate the conversation. Been enjoying talking with you guys. And if you're not already in the Discord, come hang out in the Discord. Come join me and the rest of the crew. We have a lot of good conversations. Oh, I almost forgot. My goal for this year. I haven't been a part of an org in a long time. I've been an affiliate of the Astropub Paul's org lore, but let's see. But I haven't been a part of an org for a long time, just because I don't have the time to play in a really organized manner. I play casually. So I have decided to finally start a casual org of my own, for players to join me to play, in people who play in a similar way that I do. And so I have to do a bunch of creative writing to fill out the org page. But I just wanted to make the announcement to you guys and show you that I am forming the Scavengers Union. If we ain't looting, we're shooting. And so I'll I'll fill out the org page with some creative writing and everything, and that way you guys can get an idea of what the org is about. But basically, I'm a compulsive looter. I cannot help myself. And so I love to do missions and content, but I also love to scout around and look for things and pick up everything that isn't nailed down. And whether I keep some of it, sell the rest. That's just how I play practically every game. I can't help myself. If I wasn't so OCD, my house would be a wreck and I'd be a hoarder. But that's what the Scavengers Union is all about. It's a casual org for people who play the game like me, who want to go do content, whether it's ship based or FPS or first person based or both, and do that content, but also want to loot the stuff and snag the components off the ships that we disable, or maybe do that on purpose, and we're just disabling ships to steal components, and loot every point of interest we come across. People who enjoy doing the eventual repair missions and everything, people who want to go explore and find those lost locations just to pocket all the things that you can find. So made a little logo. So I already had this logo and I just added the text to it. But well, yeah, I do still need to make I'm gonna, instead of making the Loot Goblin patches, I'm gonna make Scavengers Union patches. And so that's the other goal this year, is to not only make these Scavengers Union patches, but then also to order do another run. I'm going to do another production run of the Vomit Comet patches. And the green screen messes it up. And so with those patches, and I'm going to start with the patches, and then I want to make a merch shop. And that way I can sell things and use some of the money to donate to stackup.org, along with the money from streaming and YouTube and stuff. Oh, I accidentally picked a scab and now I'm bleeding. Oopsie. Napkin. So yeah, that's something fun I'm going to undertake. Super casual. There'll be a little space in my Discord for the Scavengers Union people. And I'll just be putting out invites to people to be like, hey, this is what I intend to do on this evening. Come join me. Super casual. Nothing serious. And but that's my play style. I haven't played seriously since 2.x days. Not enough to justify engaging with org content. Yeah, I've been playing super casual for a long time. I enjoy co-op gaming. I love co-op gaming, and so, but I will never be a sweat ever again. I'll never be that serious about it ever again. And I chafe under the rigor and the regimented nature of really organized paramilitary style orgs. That's just not my thing. I'm in the military in real life. I'm good. That's enough. I just want to have a reliable group of trustworthy people who play in a similar fashion to me. Yeah, and light RP. If you want to RP harder, but when people get too serious about your roles and chain of command and all that, and it's like, whoa, hang on there, Skippy. I'm a staff sergeant in real life. I'm really over that shit when I get home. Yeah, but yeah, that's it in terms of announcements. So stay tuned. I'll make an announcement in the Discord, and I'll put it up on my Twitter as well, about when the next episode will be. Plan on it for next week, and we'll intend on doing a deep dive into terraforming and how that can affect gameplay, and what this new terraforming tech may mean for the Star Citizen universe. Oh, one question. Either just says, before you go, just got a quick question about the marketing. Other streamers seem to think that CAG need to make Squadron 42 as successful as possible. Why? CIG made like $150 million this year, and they've got over $60 million in the bank, and you know they're like, they are well into the black, and CIG doesn't have to sell, you know, in order to pay. You know, even people think that CIG needs to pay back their investors, that their investors want to withdraw that money, and that's a misconception. People, those people have invested in CIG because they want their shares to grow in value, and I think it's a I don't know where people get the idea that CR wants to buy these people out and be 100% owner of the company again, when he has a controlling interest in the company. Now, those people invested $60 million. Now, they aren't going to get paid back $60 million. That was, you know, they invested $60 million. Like, it was like the bulk of it was a round of 40 something million, then a round of like 18 million or something like that in 2018 and 2020. Obviously, that gives them their that was the to buy a 10% stake. I think they're up to about a 15% stake in the company, but that was when the company was valuated at $500 million in 2018, 2018, I think it was. Yeah, they bought at the same rate, you know, sort of share rate in 2020 when they expanded their investment. So in order for them to get paid back, you know, obviously their investment's worth a lot more, but they don't take dividends right now. CIG hasn't been paying them dividends. Even though CIG is profitable, they haven't been paying them dividends. What those investors want is they have already seen a return on investment because the company has grown, it's valued more, and if they were to withdraw their investment, their 60 some odd million dollars would turn into $120 million. You know, let's say, you know, the company has more than doubled in size then. So let's say it turns into 150, maybe even $180 million investment. And so they couldn't withdraw all that money all at once. You know, they would do it over time, but they have been waiting for CIG to make big money. CIG doesn't make big money. CIG makes a tiny little profit every year, but those investors expect CIG's revenue earnings year over year to go up manyfold without CIG's operating expenses going up manyfold. If Squadron 42 releases this year and it sells, let's say, I mean, there's we're definitely over 3 million backers at this point, individual backers, you know, because there's like well over 5 million going on 6 million accounts. If Squadron 42 sells 3 million copies, you know, which is a modest success. If they sell 3 million copies, you know, they'll make $150 to $200 million just on PC. On top of, CIG will probably make more money this year on Star Citizen than they did last year. So they will suddenly have gone from, you know, $10 to $20 million of profit, you know, off the size of their studio to 200, you know, 200 plus, you know, plus or minus $200 million of profit in a year. And let's say all those things we just read about at the end of their goals for the company in 2026. Let's say all that comes to pass. What do you think the player base will look like this time next year? How many new players will they have? How much money will they have made? How much will have the Star Citizen player base grown by then? What do you think that will mean in terms of money? And with people seeing all that progress and the game becoming, moving closer to what would be a beta on its way to 1.0. What do you think the annual revenue of Star Citizen looks like in 3 years? At one, let's say 1.0 is in 3 to 5 years. If CIG made 150 million off of the game as it is now, what do you think that annual revenue will look like in 3 years? What do you think that will look like in 5 years? What do you think that profit margin looks like when the studio maybe grows by another 10%, 10, 20%? We're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, every year. And that profit pays dividends to those investors. And they can make a return on their investment without withdrawing their investment, a substantial return on their investment without withdrawing their investment, easily in a matter of years. That's why they haven't divested themselves. They're waiting for their payday. They know more about what's going on with the development. They know more about what's going on with the game internally than we ever will. And not only are they confident enough to leave their money in, but they've added more. So if there's anything that should give players confidence about the direction of the games and the studio, it should be the fact that these investors not only, invested like $10 million more, but they gave them a $10 million loan, something like that, within the last year. And that they have twice, they repeatedly have declined to withdraw any of their investment and have said that they have no intention to do so. And they know everything. And so when people, dig on CIG and the pace of development, where it's going and blah, 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 it's like, oh, tell me you don't know a fucking thing without telling me, Well, they specialize in marketing for entertainment. So Chris Roberts knows the Calders from back when he did movies. And so these are the people that have done promotional stuff for the movies that he made and such. I don't know if they did it for video games prior to that, but for entertainment media. I think Squadron 42 will eventually come to console, but also, like, who knows what the console market's going to look like in the future. Oh yeah, there's always going to be doomer talk, but that's what happens when people get bored. But the majority of the community, the vast, overwhelming majority of the community, doesn't follow the development like I do. I don't know anything about competitively flying and dogfighting spaceships. I don't know anything about the good components or the differences in the weapons and the FPS stuff. I play the game casually. I spend, far more time reading about the game and, learning about the game's development because, I can do that when I'm not at home and at my computer. I love playing the game, but I can watch the videos and read the articles and the dev statements while I'm at work. I download videos and rewatch them on my tablet, so that way when I'm on coming back from a call, after flying to Seattle from Boise or Salt Lake City, I've got an hour to watch YouTube videos or to read up some article, some Spectrum posts and other things that I've gotten queued up because I find it interesting, and most people, the vast majority of the Star Citizen community doesn't know any of that stuff. They've probably heard some of it via hearsay, and then you've got the whole telephone effect going on. I do need to head to bed. Yeah. But it's a thing. It's a thing. And it's not bad. Most people, I don't blame people for not being interested in following the development, at the weirdly obsessive level I do, but this is my version of the TISM. This is what my brain does. There's a handful of other things that I have weirdly encyclopedic knowledge about, because that's how my brain works, and I can't help it. It's just the way I am, and so what? No big deal. And I yeah. Here we are, way too obsessed. But yeah, well, and I have to get to bed early because I have to take my kid to his friend's house for a play date because I'll be at work and school doesn't start back up until next Monday. So yeah, but yeah, good conversation, good question, Aether Drift. I appreciate it. But yeah, I will see you guys again Saturday night probably, and I'll keep you posted on the next episode. And I will. I'm gonna be posting updates to the Scavengers Union page as I do them, just because I think it's a fun little creative writing project. But yeah, always got stuff to do for the kids in the house. Yeah, they're all off to bed, but I need to get to bed because I got to wake up, and make breakfast, and get them dressed and all that. But yeah, oh7, cheers, thanks again, and let's raid somebody real quick before we sign off because always got to pay the love forward. Let's see who's online. Don't see anyone that I follow. Anyone got any recommendation? Ooh, Wicked Wookie. Yep, Wicked Wookie's playing. We will raid Wicked Wookie. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cheers. Rating now. Good night, everybody.